Please welcome our host for today's discussion, Danielom Stachom, a Czech editor and host of TV program Hyde Civilizace, Studio 6, ČT24, Vieda24, and editor and host of Czech news channel ČT24. Danielom Stachom.
It's magnificent. It's truly magnificent. It's the source of our uniqueness. It's the source of our superpower, our intelligence. It's less than 1.5 kilogram of matter, the most complex matter in the known universe. It is it what makes us special. It is it what guides us. It is it that we truly do not understand. It is our brain. It is so crucial that if there was a transplantation, the brain would not be transplanted. The body would be transplanted. And the brain would just receive the body to go on. Tonight, we will dive deep, thanks to a remarkable scientist, into our brains to learn what does it do to navigate in the environment we are living in. And we will also dive deep into our brains to make sure that we know how to use it, to navigate in the world we are living in, to figure out what the truth truly is, to make the right choices. Because, like it or not, our society is based on trust and science. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here in person or on the stream for the interview that is part of ESET Science Talks. Good evening to you all. Our today's guest is a remarkable scientist who was born on a teeny tiny island. He grew up on a slightly larger island, but still a small community that was highly isolated. He says that there was not much more that was needed for work and survival. But he wanted to learn. He was eager to learn, but it was hard to learn something there. Because, as he remembers, quote, "I was the only child who wanted to learn French. So I was put in bookkeeping class instead." It was his mother who saved him, because she gave him tons of books to read, and he was reading and reading, but he was eager to share the knowledge. That's why, as a little kid, he started a school. I played school with my younger sisters. I was the teacher and taught them everything about what I read. And he's been hunger for knowledge for his whole life. And he gained the most prestigious prize in the world of science. And it all started with Donald the Duck. His story that led towards Nobel Prize started with comic books of Donald the Duck. And you will learn the whole story tonight. Thanks to our guest, ladies and gentlemen, Edvard Moser. Professor, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
To you, personally, brain is, fill in the blank, please.
To me, brain is everything. Just think about what life would be without a brain. It would be nothing. The brain makes us breathe, the heartbeat, makes us think, makes us remember, makes us feel. So without it, there's nothing. It's everything.
And what about from a scientific perspective? What is brain to you, a scientist?
It's complexity. So it is 86 billion neurons that connect to each other and cause 10 to the 15th connections. There's so much, so small, so difficult, but yet I think it is possible to understand.
Is it?
Yeah, we have to take one step after the other, but there's no field in sciences almost that grows as fast as neuroscience, brain science. It goes really, really fast now.
How much do we actually know about our brain?
We know a lot more than before.
Comparison to what time?
Yeah. No, it's still a lot to know, but actually we are making progress. So, but of course we never know what we don't know. So it is. All I would say is that we have made a lot of progress.
We will never know everything. That's given.
No.
That's absolutely okay. But how could we learn about the most complex matter in the known universe using just the same matter that is so complex and the most complex in the universe?
Yeah, in principle, it sounds difficult to understand the brain with the brain, especially if you would understand, if I would try to understand my own brain at the same time as I was using the brain to understand my brain. So that gets us into some very difficult loops.
Yeah, if you are having headache right now, it's okay. That's a natural, normal reaction.
But I'm not worried about that, because scientists try to simplify all the time. And most neuroscientists try to isolate phenomena, make them very simple in the lab, find different species to study, often mice, rats, but very often also just flies. We can learn very much from the fly brain. So make it simpler and simpler and simpler, and then there is a difference after all. So we can observe and make conclusions.
Fruit flies are highly popular.
They are.
For research.
They used to be popular in genetics, but now they are also popular for studying the brain, because they have a decent number of cells, but you know, actually some of them, you can, what you know in the fly brain is the connections between the cells. So it's one of the big things that happened in brain sciences the last year, that now all connections have been mapped in the fly brain, whereas will never be there, at least not for a long time in the mammalian or in the human brain. So knowing the connections, that's a good starting point. It's like having an atlas, and then you can start looking around, not just looking into darkness.
It's the first globe for the brain.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah. What did you buy when you get your first money? Mowing the lawn?
I bought books. It wasn't about the brain, but it was about all kinds of other things, volcanoes, and even the relativity theory.
But you bought a globe, did you know?
Oh, a globe. Yeah, that too. Maybe that, you read the book, right? The biography.
Yeah, that was in your biography. With the first money, you bought a globe to learn about all the states, all the capitals.
Yeah.
Do you recall Czechoslovakia and its capital?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no. So I like geography, and I always try to get my parents to travel to these places too, but at that time Czechoslovakia was not accessible, so I didn't make it. I made it later though.
We are happy to have you here now, in 2025, to discuss what's ahead of us. When we are trying to map the human brain, we need to scale it up quite a bit, actually, from the fruit flies to understand the human brain. How will AI help us to understand our brains?
So AI is helpful to us in understanding complexity in many ways, and often understanding it in ways we don't understand. So AI quite often works, but we don't necessarily know why it works. It's just that AI, by getting exposed over and over and over again to material, sees patterns, and then that can be used in research as well. So we are increasingly using that more and more. But it is just the beginning, and I mean, now we are mostly using AI to analyze data, so it's machine learning in a way. You feed the data and then figure out patterns, but I think it's quite close to the next stage, where you actually let AI explore and come up with hypotheses and sort of do much of the work of a scientist. But that said, I still think there is a need for biological intelligence quite a while.
What about the combination of technology and biological? Because right now, quite a lot of companies are working on chips that could be implanted in brains. Everybody heard about Elon Musk and his Neuralink, and other companies that are trying to push it. Yeah. What's the current state from the perspective of neuroscientists, despite this is nature, not your primary focus in your research, about the current state? What can we do without, the PR and marketing? What's the real stuff right now?
Well, let me first say that the combination of artificial and natural intelligence is very powerful, but not in the way you mentioned. So it's becoming a tool, and if humans learn to use and can use artificial intelligence in the right way, it's the dynamic that actually can help us find out how the world works. But then you come to the implantations, the brain, what we call brain-machine interface. So it means that you implant devices into the brain to listen to brain cells and also to direct signals into brain cells. That has actually been around for a long time. It's getting better, but the idea is not new at all. So it's been there, for example, for you have cochlear implants, that means in the ears, that help you convert signals, interpret them so that you can understand auditory signals. There are attempts to create replacements for vision, so artificial eyes that can interpret visual signals and send them to the brain so the brain can interpret them. And not the least, there are for people who can't move their arms or feet or so, then you can interpret the signals from the brain, for example, from the motor cortex, which there's a cell that says, move my arm like this or that. Then you can do that on some artificial arm. But all of this has been around, that's being developed, and while Elon Musk's company is doing the same, they're just doing the same. So, of course, they get a lot of attention, but it is also a lot of hype, so that they're not delivering anything more than we can do, that neuroscientists have been doing for a while. But, of course, everyone thinks about listening to cells, finding out what you're thinking, and even inducing thoughts, right? That is the science fiction that people are thinking about, but we are very far from that, because both thoughts and ideas are spread all around in the brain among those 86 billion neurons, and you don't know which ones to target. So that's not where we are, and maybe not even where we want to be.
And that's what you have worried in the interview that was published by Science Media Hub in 2021. You talk about what is ethically justifiable to do, and you mentioned that implanting memories or deleting memories is something that should be behind the red line.
Yeah, it is. But I also probably mention, or at least think now, that we are not there.
Yes,
I wouldn't be there for a long, long time. But, I mean, that said, you can, if you put one of us in a scanner, if I go into a brain imaging scanner, right, and my brain is read out, you can read out very general patterns. So you can, for example, see if I'm afraid, some brain areas light up. And so you can even sort of read out from the brain where I'm looking, and probably some general kind of thought, but not the specifics. So that the specifics, that relies on the specific cells that are spread all around, and finding that you have to use totally different methods if you wanted to do that.
Do you like looking at brains?
Yeah, I actually don't do that very often, because human brains, I have seen a few, but not many. That's not what I work with, right? I work with mouse brains or rat brains, but even so, that's not where the work is. The work is, to a very large extent, on a computer.
Because you concentrate on grid cells.
Yeah.
Grid cells are giving structure to our brain, giving the understanding to help us to navigate in the environment. Is it fair to compare it to the GPS that we are having while driving a car?
To some extent. So I never do that in scientific publications myself, because it's inaccurate. But it's not bad, and the reason why it is similar is that we have an internal map in our brain, and the grid cells that you mentioned, they are part of that. And as we move around in the environment, then different grid cells get activated. And this is dependent on how fast we move and what direction we move. And that's the same with the GPS. It's just that that's picked up by satellites up there, whereas in the brain there are other cells that pick it up. But it is the changes in this GPS system are dependent on how fast we move and what direction we move. And it can even calculate position without seeing where you are. You don't need to see the stage or the door or the curtains or whatever. So that is a similarity, because the GPS also is based on distance and direction, right? And nothing more.
And counting the differences to make sure that you know the correct position.
Exactly.
You mapped the signal thanks to your subjects. Who was El Burrito?
El Burrito was a rat that lived about 10 years ago, and then a student of us, he's now a professor, he recorded cells from that rat, and this was his favorite rat because it gave so many cells. At that time it was many cells, right? So he was very lucky and was a very important part of his PhD.
It was Jonathan Whitlock who did
Correct.
an experiment with El Burrito in 2005 when he was mapping just one grid cell, one electrical signal from the grid cell.
Yes.
But you were able to scale it up to many grid cells that were being observed at the same time in just a few years.
Yeah. At that time, we were, I mean, as you say, usually one cell, maybe 5 or 10 if we were really good. But today, this is totally different. You can record many thousands of cells at the same time. And why does that matter? It's because the information, the complex information in the brain doesn't really lie in the individual cells. They're just building blocks. The information lies in the combinations of activity. And then imagine if you have, let's say you only have 100 grid cells, then if you combine their activity, and let's say you have 10 possible activity states of each of those 100 cells. If each can be 10 different states, if they were independent, the number of combinations is 10 to the hundreds. That's more than the number of atoms in the universe. So, I mean, with all these combinations lying there, the brain can do new things all the time, can create new memories, new thoughts, everything.
Because it's receiving so much information that it can combine together.
Yeah, and the combinations are they're just endless. And that's where the information lies. So that's why now that we can record combinations instead of just a few cells, that brings us into a new universe.
So can we imagine the grid cell as a beacon that is sending some information that is being combined?
In some sense, sending information, yes. I wouldn't use the word beacon, but it is sending information. And then the big question is indeed, who is listening?
As always.
Where are the cells that are listening? Right? I mean, what we see is that the grid cells, they're sending some signal that looks like a coordinate system, really. But then, who's reading this out? Where are the cells that read it out? We assume that it must be the cells they speak to, but this, they're showing in the brain that there is a signal, that's the easy part. And then how it's read out and by whom, that is a more difficult part, because then you have to see how is a code read and how is it transformed at the next stage. And then it goes from cell to cell, the codes are transformed all the time. And that is, we are on the track of some of them, but it is very, very difficult.
Each grid cell responds to a specific pattern.
Yep.
The pattern is hexagonal.
Yep.
Why hexagonal?
That is, we believe this is because of how the cells are wired together.
To fit together.
Yeah, they connect together, right? So each cell sends out, it looks like a tree with roots and with branches. And then each branch, each little branch will branch up many, many times, connects to another grid cell or some other cell. And then they form a very complex network. And if you wire them in a certain way, that means that certain cells connect more to certain other cells, then you can actually get an activity pattern that is hexagonal. It's hexagonal inside the brain itself, but then this inside hexagonal pattern is then mapped onto the world, and that's when we see it.
And we can see the hexagonal pattern in nature in various parts of the nature. Bees loves, for example, the hexagonal pattern, and other animals as well.
Yeah.
But we are talking about grid cells.
Yeah.
There was a great potential that we could have been not talking about grid cells because you were considering different names as well.
Yes.
You mentioned that in the interview in 2014. Yes. What were the top 3 potential names for grid cells? Was there something really cool?
No, grid cells is definitely the best name. I'm so
really?
happy that, yeah, because when you name something, there's a big problem. If you choose the wrong name, you're stuck with it. You can't change a name once you have started. And grid cell, that is just descriptive. It just describes that it looks like a grid, nothing more, no explanation. And that means whatever, however, in whichever way you change the explanation as we understand more, it doesn't matter because the name is only what it looks like. And therefore it can persist for a long time. But we did try to also consider other descriptive names that didn't imply any explanation. One of them was something about tessellation cells, because tessellation means that there's a pattern that repeats it ever. But no one would understand what a tessellation is, so I'm so happy we didn't use that. So grid, I think most people know what a grid is. It's like your chicken mesh, right? It looks like just a pattern that repeats and is very regular.
You've been working on grid cells for decades. You've been concentrating also on how grid cells plan. How do grid cells in our brains plan what to do? Give us an example that we are in a maze and the grid cells are trying to figure out how to get out.
Yeah, so now that we are able to record from thousands of cells at the same time, we can see that there is actually some planning activity. You don't see it in the individual cells, so you need to have many, many cells. But then if you have all these many cells, then you can see patterns. And if you then use a computer, machine learning, artificial intelligence, to actually see what does this pattern mean? When do you else see the pattern? What you see is that you can decode some of the activity of the grid cells. And what you then see is that every 125 milliseconds, the cells send out a signal where they actually leave the position where the rat is, and they go forward to the left, like this. And then next 125 milliseconds, they go forward to the right. And then they go left, next 125 milliseconds, and right. So it's an alternation pattern where the cells together explore the world that is ahead and around. And for a rat that's walking in a small environment, that's usually a meter or two ahead. And it is actually, this is fascinating to me at least, because you see patterns that exist in totally different places in nature. So an example is some species of bats. So they use echolocation to find out what the world is ahead of them. So they send these sound beams ahead of them. But it's also in those species going left, right, in the same pattern, same distance, approximately 30 degrees to the left, 30 degrees to the right. And but then these bats, they zoom in these sonar signals when there is something interesting, like a fly that is ahead of them. And it actually turns out that these, in the rats, when these cells go this left, right ahead, if there is something interesting ahead, for example, a small reward, a chocolate pellet, or they just have to go to a lamp to find something, or whatever, then these signals actually don't do the left thing, right? But then they, for a little while, they go to the interesting thing. So it means that you have a way to scan the environment ahead of you, but when something important happens, you use this scanning mechanism to zoom in on the interesting thing.
So my brain is constantly checking the potential future movement of me to understand the environment. And when it sees something that I would like the open fridge in the evening, when I'm supposed to go to sleep and not open once again the chocolate that was there, it will zoom in. So I'm actually forced to go to the fridge. So I'm not the one to be blamed.
No. The grid cells are also not to blame because they just scan the environment, right? So someone else, maybe it's the prefrontal cortex, or maybe it's
Sorry,
amygdala.
I tried.
It's amygdala because it's, you know, you come to the emotions, right? That's where it happens.
Once again, it's up to me. Sorry guys. why is it useful? Why do we need to know this? Because this is the fundamental research that will not help us not to be blamed for the evening eating and overeating, but it can help us to treat diseases such as Alzheimer's disease and such.
Yeah. So it's useful because I have always thought, and I still think very clearly, that in order to understand defective brains, diseases, then you need to also know you need first to know how the normal brain works. So it's like if you have to fix your washing machine, right? You can't just fix the default, the defect. You actually need to know how a washing machine works. And it's the same way. I think you need to understand the normal brain to know what's going wrong. What is it that is different? And then you mention Alzheimer's disease, which is particularly relevant for navigation, because navigation, it means finding your way. And as we all know, one of the first symptoms in Alzheimer's disease is that the patient gets lost. It's often before anything else almost. And that is because it involves those cells that allow us to find our way, the grid cells, and also some other cells that care about direction or position or the structure or environment. Those are in just that area that is first affected in Alzheimer's disease. So I think understanding how that brain area works, what's special about the cells, what makes them vulnerable, that is a beginning to understand also Alzheimer's disease. But in a more general sense, I would say you need to understand how the brain works. And in neuroscience, in brain sciences, we often say how the brain computes, because in some sense the brain is like a computer. It's just that the hardware is quite different. But if we understand what we call the algorithms, I mean the rules for those computations, then we also learn what goes wrong in other parts of the brain, in other conditions, for example, in schizophrenia or depression or anxiety or whatever. So just having that basic knowledge, that sets the stage for solving many brain diseases, whether it's psychiatry or neurology or whatever.
Where do you want to go next? What do you want to concentrate on? Because I know you are interested in the cognitive functions. How we think.
Yes.
How far did you get to understand it?
Well, finding your way is a sort of thinking, right? But the difference is that finding your way is so ingrained into the brain, and that's because it's totally fundamental, right? So that's why we share many of the mechanisms with flies, even, because you can't survive if you can't do that, right? So absolutely essential for evolution, and then evolution figures out a mechanism to do that, and if it works, then it's retained. So most mammals, all mammals, do it in more or less the same way. So that's why I'm interested in space and navigation, and also time, by the way. But you're right that in the beginning, I'm a psychologist, right? So I started at the top. I wanted to understand the most difficult parts of the brain, so like thinking, or planning, or and also memories, and that's why I think that's the aim. That's where I want to go. But I don't want to leave navigation space, because it is so easy, in quotation marks, because it can be easily studied in rats and mice or in flies. You have full control. The brain areas are very similar to those that we use for the same functions in the human brain. And we have gotten quite far in finding the computational rules that underlie space, whereas when it comes to thinking, for example, we know barely anything. It's very, very difficult. But then we can find those rules, and then we can go and ask, do they apply also to thinking? So it's a sort of bottom-up process. And but ultimately, both me and many brain scientists really want to get to the most advanced functions.
Why do you think consciousness would be the last one to be understood?
Yes, I think that's a very hard one. And you actually see that when you see the career of successful neuroscientists. As they get older, I mean, in the beginning when they're young, and still when they're my age in the early 60s, then they avoid this. This is too difficult. But then they pass 75, 85, and suddenly they all get interested in this, because that's the big, big problem, right? How do we explain consciousness? How do we actually not, I mean, because there's a difference of finding out what the brain does. So how do we find our way? What even causes a thought? But how do we know that we are doing this? How do we observe ourselves doing thinking or remembering? Or that is a very hard one. There are people working on it, and I think there's, for example, no specific area. There's something that is embedded in the whole brain, and human brain is probably special, but probably not the only one. Some degree of consciousness is present from much earlier on, I'm pretty sure.
That's the next step for the research that you started in Trondheim, in a lab that was in former bomb shelter.
Yeah, that's right.
You had your lab in bomb shelter.
Yeah, I mean, the bomb shelter was actually a very convenient place to start, because it was electrically very insulated, right? So there was no electrical noise, and if you record from the brain, it's very, very small signals in the micro or millivolt range, so that you definitely don't want electrical disturbances. So a bomb shelter was perfect in that sense, but only for a while. I'm still now happy that we aren't there anymore.
Could you read this message? This is the message that was sent to your phone in 2014.
Yeah, this is Swedish then.
Yes, I can't read it, honestly.
No, okay, so it says, Edvard, ring mig genast, viktigt, and then Göran, age. And that means, Edvard, call me as soon as possible, it's very important. And then signed Göran H. And Göran H. was the secretary of the Nobel Committee. So why didn't he call? This is the usual thing, right? So, but that was because I was on a plane. So he tried to get to the captain, but he didn't get through. So then he sent a text message, and this was the message I got when I landed, along with about 300 others.
Landed in München. This is the print screen of the message that says telecom.de. So truly, in Germany, in October 2014, when you first was told that you will receive the Max Planck Award.
Yes, that's what I said.
Yeah.
I never heard about that.
But they were waiting for you with a bucket full of flowers,
yes,
and saying, oh, you will receive the Max Planck Award.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes.
I was like, I don't know what that is. You are the first laureate to ever receive that kind of prize. But then you get the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, I found out eventually. I wasn't prepared for it. I mean, if you know, I knew that we were on the short list, right? I mean, you get various signals about that. But I was so sure that that year it would not happen, because there was someone else that got it for the brain the year before. And I thought, it rotates, and I will get it. If I get it, I will be 75 or 80. That's a normal, right?
Yeah, usually.
And then I was 50, 52.
Yeah, young kid receiving the Nobel Prize.
Yeah. For that is fairly young.
It used
especially
to be
medicine.
Yeah, especially I do believe physics was the longest time between the discovery and the prize, but it has changed significantly, especially last year's award due to the AI that was awarded in physics and chemistry as well. Yeah. It used to be 26 years between the discovery and the Nobel Prize that was awarded to the scientist who made it. You made it. You had a huge celebration when you headed home the next day.
Yeah.
I heard it was quite a party.
Yeah, it was parties every day for a week, and then it sort of quieted down a little bit, and then it came in December again. It was party after party, and almost too much, really. So.
You said that you were treated like a king.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not really sure that I do agree what king is experiencing when you were partying hard for a month. What's happening in Swedish royal family?
No, I don't know what. I assume if you're a king and you have parties all the time, you have to make sure that you don't drink too much.
But in your story, this is the most, let's say, famous step, but it's not the only one. It all started with the bubbles, with the letters that you wanted to crack so bad. Because you received the comic books of Donald the Duck from your mom, who wanted you to stay quiet in the morning.
Yes.
You were 4 years old.
Yes.
And you wanted to know what the Donald the Duck just said in the comic book.
Yeah, that was very important to me. So I figured out myself how to do the reading. So
he taught Hillsam to read to understand Donald the Duck. This is the motivation for the future Nobel Prize laureate.
Yes.
You were born on a teeny tiny island. How many inhabitants were there?
Where I was born, 250.
250?
Yeah.
And then you moved to a large island.
Yeah, I was 10,000.
10,000. A huge, huge community.
Yes, yes.
That was, as you have mentioned in the interviews, quite poor, and there was no dancing.
No dancing, no card playing, and no music.
But your parents like to drink wine.
Yeah, they came from Germany, so they weren't used to this. So they bought bottles of wine to this place, and they even thought it was a nice thing to give to a gift to people there. But that has mixed results. It's not like that now, though. But this is the 1960s, right? So it was very different times.
So everything was around the church?
Oh, yeah.
Everything was happening around the church. Yes. So you needed to keep it a secret?
Yeah, you didn't talk about alcohol. No.
You talked about the eagerness to learn. You wanted to learn. You read all the books that your mom gave you about physics, mathematics, about geography.
Yeah.
Was there something you did not like?
No, I think that was the thing. I liked everything. And one of my favorites was actually geology and volcanoes. So I still retain that hobby of walking on active volcanoes. So now it's a couple of years since I did that, but I always think that's a huge excitement. So that was.
Excuse me.
But that I disliked? No, not really. I thought everything was fun. Yeah.
Till you get to physical education, as I have learned, you were not.
Oh,
fan
yeah,
of PE.
okay, yeah, that's not science, but well, maybe it is science, but yeah, I liked running, but I didn't like ball games. That was the only thing I couldn't do.
Yeah, I heard that soccer was something that you.
Oh gosh, that's terrible.
But about the volcanoes, that's the condition that it needs to be active.
No, but it's more fun, right? It's more exciting.
Oh yeah, it's usually fun when lava is, streaming next to you.
Yes.
Is there a favorite one?
I think one of the favorite one is actually the nearest one almost. Disregarding Iceland, because I still haven't been to Iceland to see. I've been in Iceland and seen some of the volcanoes, but it's more like fumes, right? The real lava is what's it called?
Indonesia, for example?
No. In Italy, right?
In Italy? In Etna, for example?
No. On this small island.
Stromboli?
No. What
Do you have a guess?
Yeah, someone knows.
Yeah, help us. Let's use the collective power of our brains.
Yes, it begins with S. Santorini.
Santorini.
Yeah.
That's the favorite one.
Yeah. Okay.
When you were a kid and you were the one who wanted to learn, and others did not.
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
No, I mean, it wasn't the most stimulating place to learn in ground school, right? Because they had no differentiation, so you had the same class for everyone. I even got complaints from my teacher that I worked too fast because she didn't have anything more for me. But when I got to high school, it was very different. That was a very stimulating environment.
You had a good teacher there?
Yeah, several good teachers. Yeah.
And you also started an astronomy club?
Yeah, then I was young, together with a friend, yes. Yeah, we read you knew all the distances between the planets and the sun and everything. So just crazy things to know, not useful at all.
But you love the numbers?
Yeah, I love the numbers, yeah.
You are the psychologist who loves mathematics.
Yeah, I love mathematics. And then, I started out with mathematics, but then ended up with psychology. But then very surprisingly, at that time when I started, there was very little mathematics in psychology because it was still at an early stage. But now mathematics is coming back into neuroscience at full speed because it's getting very quantitative with all these complex patterns. And we are using that ourselves too now. So, I've been lucky to work together with people from the maths department, and that's extremely useful to combine forces.
You were attracted to this field also thanks to the magazine Scientific American that was published in 1974. It was the cover with the blue brain on the title.
Yes.
This is when you saw this has potential. But before you were allowed to start to study psychology, you needed to work in a psychological hospital.
Yeah, I worked for a year.
Yeah, for a year. You were with the patients.
Yeah.
That is, I believe, crucial for a scientist who does fundamental research to see what is needed to be treated.
Yeah, it was useful, absolutely. It is the sort of the end result of what we are doing, right? The application where we want it to be applied in the end. Absolutely.
Now we are in the world where it's hard to find out sometimes what the truth is. How do you use your brain to figure it out?
Well, I use my brain. Everyone uses the brain, even if they do the wrong things, right? But I think, I mean, I'm trained to use scientific methods, and that is what I also want the world to be. So, but when I was a student, to some extent also in high school, we did do experiments, right? We found out what is a process that makes you conclude that something is, if not truth, that's a kind of truth, right? And something is not true, right? Wrong, or misinterpreted. You use a scientific method, you try out things, you ask a question, do an experiment, find or observation, and you see, is the observation consistent with this idea or is it not? And then you don't work alone, you work together with people. Everyone asks critical questions, and this is a process that drives knowledge forward. This is what it has done for hundreds of years. We build up systematically more and more knowledge, and then we know this is scientifically tested, and this is what scientists believe today based on everything we know. And it's been like that actually for most of my life. But now this is starting to change, right? Because there are so many claims out there about quasi-science. I mean, people say it's based on science, but it's not at all. So I think it's extremely important that the general public just knows how science works, and that we all can tell the good from the bad. And this is something that we need to learn, and it's especially dangerous when we can't really know what is true any longer. In the good old days, when I was young, right? I mean, what you read in a newspaper or heard on the TV, in my case, was generally quite true because it was filtered through many layers of editors. And that's not the case any longer, because what is out there now on social media is a mix of good and bad, and there's a lot of bad, right? So, and much of it is completely fake, right? So.
And how do you treat it on a daily basis? When you are watching a press conference of a politician and he says something, how do you use, in the short way, the scientific method to figure out, okay, this could be true or this is simply wrong or a lie? Yeah, so it depends, of course, what the argument is. But if the argument is based on things that I would not call facts, right? Or if, it could even be studies that have been performed, but they really misinterpreting data, or then I think scientists have to tell, and that's what we are doing, right? But sometimes you're shouting for deaf ears, because humans are humans, and humans often want to, they like to keep their thoughts, right? You don't want to hear anything that's totally inconsistent with your worldview, belief, right? So it's quite hard to get through. But I think, again, as things was before, when things were much more filtered and misinformation didn't get out, things were a little bit easier.
now that sorting process is really, really difficult, and it puts high demands on everyone that we actually have to do this. But then knowing how science works is at least one way that I think there is hope. And I think it starts already at school. Children have to learn science, and they have to learn to do science, how to obtain information.
You said in 2017, quote, "I think democracy relies on informed public. So the people go to elections should have a general knowledge, not only about science, about anything, about how the society works and about why things are, they are. People need to know how knowledge is generated."
Yeah, well, that's what I said. Yeah. I think they should know. It doesn't mean that those who don't know shouldn't vote, right? That's the tricky thing. But
this is so-called mic drop moment, when you are building up to a question and your guest is just dropping the mic, so you need to go absolutely different way than you were planning as a host of a program. I will stay in the area and go a little bit deeper in what we are experiencing right now, which is truly horrible, honestly. There is no question there, I believe, because we have some politicians who try to paint scientists as enemies of people. What are the consequences?
I think if they get through with that, it is very dangerous, because I don't know much about how things are here, but I watch every day what's happening in the United States, right? And the defunding of science, building down universities, and making university and science not credible any longer is extremely dangerous, because then it becomes just some sort of opinion, right? It's not really anything neutral any longer. And the most dangerous is perhaps to get rid of sciences that you don't like. For example, in the US, it's climate science or green energy, and all these things that government doesn't like, right? And essentially, they are completely removing that kind of research. And vaccines is another one.
So how to treat this situation? What we should do? We who are not Nobel Prize laureates, at least some of you yet, keeping fingers crossed.
That may change.
I hope so.
Yes.
I do hope so. So, what's going to be the next step that I'm supposed to do as an inhabitant of Czech Republic or Slovakia? What should I do tomorrow when we are having politicians who are attacking science, who are attacking scientists?
Yeah, no, we just have to speak out. I think there's no alternative, and many won't listen. But if you don't speak out, that's even worse. And I think journalists are extremely important. Those who have TV shows, extremely important, because they form the opinions and they can be the critical voices, right? And that's why when such tendencies happen, like again in the United States today, media are among the first to be attacked. So, but speaking out, I think it's the only thing we can do. Protesting, and then, but being decent. I mean, you don't want to use the same methods as the opponents necessarily. So
use your voice as much as you can. So go on your socials, post, go to the demonstrations to protest.
Yeah, and yeah, I think so.
Should I write to my politicians, those who are, in the parliament and are saying something that I think is unscientific, are missing the point, the difference between CO2 and CO, for example?
Yeah, but I think if you write directly to them, it may not help, but I think it helps if you put it on your TV show or in this interview, right, which you're doing. I mean, you need to raise public awareness.
So tell the politicians, please.
Yes.
Dear politicians, Nobel Prize laureate Edvard Moser has a message for you. The floor is yours.
Well, remember, I got the Nobel Prize for grid cells.
Will we handle it? Are you optimistic that we will handle the attacks on science?
In some sense, yes. I mean, we have been quite good at it. I mean, when I was younger, there was a worry. Then it wasn't AI, but it was biotechnology, right? And all the scenarios about cloning humans and so on. But still, I mean, after a while, governments have been able to work out some rules, and then at least most countries do follow them. Whether that will happen with AI, I'm not sure, and I'm less sure when many countries go in an authoritarian direction, because then it may be misused in the interest of those people. But I'm basically always an optimist, but just now I feel this may take quite a while.
Usually I try to stand out of the topic that we are discussing and not to involve my personal opinion, but in the opening I said that our society is based on trust and science. That's something I deeply believe, that we trust each other, that we won't do anything bad while we are here together. And science that gives us the understanding of the world and the chance to not only live but also survive.
Yeah.
Would you agree, and what do you consider be the pillars on which our society is standing?
I think this trust in science is totally basic for us, and I just think that this is something we need to work on.
You said that if there was no brain, there would be nothing.
Yeah.
What would be there if there was no science?
I can't. It's almost like the brain question, because if you remove science, there would be nothing, right? Because all we have here, the technology, our health, everything is totally based on science, whether it's medicine or whether it's technology, physics, not the least, cell phones and internet is all a result of science.
So we would be not only bored, but dead.
Well, in that case, maybe you would be in the Stone Age.
In the Stone Age?
Yes.
Well, as Albert
so
Einstein...
might not be dead, but very close.
It's what Albert Einstein said, that I don't know what weapons would be used in the Third World War, but I'm absolutely certain what would be used in the Fourth.
Yeah, exactly.
Just stones.
Yes, yeah.
And wood, because there would be nothing else.
Yeah.
You mentioned the attack on universities as a sign how, for example, the government is trying to make sure that they control what people think as a way how to diminish the understanding of the situation by the general public. What do you think about the attacks on humanities? Because we have STEM research, or let's say hard sciences, but we have also social studies and humanities, and especially social studies and humanities are quite often being attacked by the politicians.
Yeah. No, all sciences are important, equally important, but the ones that are often attacked the most are the social sciences, and humanities, because they're often critical to the current society, right? I mean, that's their job, just to see alternatives and criticize, which is healthy for a democracy. But I can also very easily see how that is, just like the media, journalists are attacked by forces that try to get away from democracies.
To diminish the voice.
Yeah.
To control what is in the society.
Yeah. That's.
But you are still optimistic.
I've always been an optimist, but I'm born at an age when things generally went well, right? So, but still,
it was called war back then. You spent your mandatory military service in a bunker.
No, that's true. But then everything changed, right? So that was nice in 1989, for example. So and then things moved very nicely onwards. But I think there's always a reaction, and at some point maybe things do change. I mean, I've seen it going back and forth so many times.
So we should keep going, not let it go, and push it hard. Do I understand you correctly?
We should work against and express our own views if you don't agree with what other people think, and be vocal about it. I think that's the most important.
How could STEM scientists help the scientists who are in the humanities and social studies? From your experience, how could help them? How they could help them if they are being attacked?
I think different ways to do that, but again, by comparison to the US, which I know most about because I'm also a member of the National Academy over there, is that scientists try all they can to influence politicians and to influence people, and not the least support the scientists, especially those who are in endangered areas like climate science or earth sciences, environmental protection, and now within health sciences, especially vaccines, right? So these people are at danger, especially if they speak out, because they may lose their jobs, they will be fired and everything. So having the support of the community and letting the community taking the burden as much as possible rather than individuals is at least one thing we can do. But again, it's not just a job for the scientists, it's something we all have to participate in, and we have to be vocal about it and express our opinions and be brave, because sometimes that comes at a cost.
Actually, that's something that we are right now experiencing. We have had never trouble to persuade American scientists to talk openly to media, to give interviews, to talk about their science, about the situation in the sciences in general.
Yeah.
But since the new administration was introduced, they are worried. They honestly tell us, I can't talk to you because I'm worried about my job.
I know many scientists in the US who don't dare to speak out because they are really afraid for retributions. So, yeah.
On a more positive note, I'm 15. I'm considering to be a scientist. Why should I do it?
Because it's fun. Yeah, it's one of the best jobs you can have, right? So you continuously you continue to be a child, right? You try to find out about the world, and you learn more and more, and so that is the main reason for it. And of course, then it's also important for our for the world that we develop science and develop knowledge and make things better. But both better, for many it's already very good, right? But there are things that should be better. And again, example, saving the planet. I mean, it really needs science. So those are also reasons. So there's a personal reason. It's fun. It's a very interesting job. But it's also something that we need scientists for the world.
You skipped the part when you, as a scientist, need to clean the cages of the rats, pick up the droppings, live in the bunker.
Exactly. No, but yeah, it comes at a cost. I mean, you have to be, especially patience. You have to be really patient, because very often your ideas do not work out, and you have to start over again. But nonetheless, overall, it's a fun process, because you always go into the unknown.
And how do you deal with the frustration when nothing is going right?
So today, science is done by teams of people. So we work together, and then it is much easier. I can imagine 100 years ago, when scientists were just sitting there on their own and looking into a microscope. That must have been a very different business, really. Now science is very, very social. You meet colleagues all the time, and you discuss, and you challenge your opinions, but you also share your frustrations.
So after a conference, you sit with your colleagues around the table, and you just spill it out.
No, I would rather say we spit it out, but then we think about some other way to do it, right? So it's always with a good outcome.
To find a solution.
Yeah,
that's what helps.
Exactly. Yeah.
Please, could you look at the audience and tell me who these people are? They decided to spend the Friday afternoon listening to a scientist about grid cells.
Yeah, no, that's what gives hope, right? So I think because I'm advocating for people to choose science, especially when I meet young people. But the most important, actually, is that the society, that people appreciate science and think it's important, and it's a way to objective information to guide you through life, and something that we should keep on developing, and also learning the next generations, our own children and grandchildren, should learn about science, right? And we need to preserve this, especially when it's under attack.
So we are in the presence of the hope of humanity.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for doing that for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We started with the brain. We continued using the brain. Let's close it up with the brain. Imagine that I am a brain that will answer any question you have about me, the brain. What would you ask?
Oh gosh, that's a difficult question.
Imagining me as a brain. Okay, I understand.
Okay, perhaps I would ask the consciousness question.
The consciousness question?
Yeah,
you are
yes.
too young to ask this question. You are too young.
Well,
you need to wait 15 years.
Well, that's because I'm realistic, right? But if you say you know everything, that's one of the first things I would wonder about, sure.
So consciousness it is.
Yeah, I would like to know how consciousness works, for sure, absolutely. It's just that I think it's such a long way to go, so I better spend my time on grid cells.
Says Edvard Moser. Professor? This is the picture that will be quoted. This picture will be quoted, Edvard Moser and the Hope. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, here or online. Have a great evening. Thank you so much. Professor, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.